profound and wondrous Dharma is really entered in the dream and
it to hear, accept, maintain. May I taste the truth
of the
words.
Good morning. This morning, I will be talking about healing. What is healing? What does healing look like? What does being whole look like? Does healing mean we stop hurting? Is healing different from freedom? How is Zen practice healing? And how, in practice, do I work with my wounds, my hurt places, vulnerabilities, also failings, mistakes? How do I practice with loss and the parts in me that feel broken? And how do we practice with or in relationships that may be hurt or broken or wounded? And what is a healing practice within systems and structures that are divisive, broken, enacting domination or enacting harm, enacting separation? And how honor the depth of suffering and the deep, complicated, tangled histories of harm? In the book Radical Dharma, there's a chapter by Lama Rod Owens called An Informal Contemplation on Healing. And this piece opens with a few quotes, including this from The Salt Eaters by Tony Cade Bambara. Are you sure, sweetheart, that you want to be well? Just so as you're sure, sweetheart, and ready to be healed, because wholeness is no trifling matter. A lot of weight when you're well. And so I feel this informing the basic inquiry here of what is healing? What does it mean to be healed? And Lama Rod, in his piece, talks about how distrust may arise around what it means to be healed. Is being healed being in a world beyond anger, beyond woundedness, beyond despair? If I'm healed, am I no longer attuned to the suffering of others? Does healing mean I forget how I've been hurt and how I have been hurt? I may also distrust healing if I have doubts about whether I am inherently worthy of healing. Does my healing mean I don't hold others accountable? Or I might think healing is for the oppressed or for people that have been hurt much more deeply than I have. How is healing for me located as I am in the privilege of being a white man? And how do we heal together across difference and disagreement? A few weeks ago, Dogen Sarah talked about a recent ceremony which took place on May 4th called May We Gather, a National Buddhist Memorial Service for Asian American Ancestors. And it was organized by Duncan Ryuken Williams, Funi Shu, and Chenxing Han. And actually, I'll put a link to the website where you can still view the ceremony if you like. Part of what was important and potentially healing about this ceremony is was acknowledging and honoring how Buddhist traditions in this country have roots in Asian American ancestors. And this is significant as many white-dominated Buddhist centers have participated in what Funi Shu refers to as, quote, the mainstream erasure of the contributions of Asian and Asian American Buddhists in the development of Buddhism in the US. And so it was a multifaceted ritual, and it included Dharma talks, chanting in a number of languages, memorial offerings, and there was also an enactment of healing. And that was based on the Japanese art of repairing broken ceramics, which is known as kintsugi. And so kin means gold, and sugi here means repair or patch, graft or splice. And so kintsugi means repairing with gold or golden joinery. And the broken pieces are sealed or sutured or mended using golden lacquer, or a glue mixed with gold powder. And so rather than kind of covering over or disguising or trying to hide how something was broken and possibly also how it was repaired, kintsugi makes it clearly visible, makes this history or this process of breakage and restoration. And so I'm going to try and do a screen share to show a few examples. Oh, where does that come from? Okay. All right. So there's an example. Another example. Another one. There's one in process. Here's the next one. Is a lotus flower, and this is what was used in the ceremony. So lotus flower is a symbol of awakening rooted in muddy water, rooted in the suffering of the world. And in the ceremony, representatives from various Buddhist traditions in attendance came forward to apply a gold lacquer to the cracks in the lotus flower. So I have a few examples. All right. Now let's see. Now, how do I end the screen share? Yeah. Okay. So Chen Xing Han spoke of this as, quote, transforming brokenness into beauty. The work of repairing our communities requires remembering rather than hiding the ways in which we've been hurt. The careful rejoining process of kintsugi embodies our collective efforts to heal the wounds of racism and religious bigotry. And so kintsugi embodies a kind of a spirit of appreciating the unique beauty of imperfections and how I respond to cracks and breaks, and can resonate with this spirit of wabi-sabi, which can appreciate, irregularities and asymmetries of organic processes and accidents in the creative process and natural manifestations of wear and tear. So rather than trying to hide imperfection and impermanence, appreciating how they're illuminating something deeper than perfection. or an ideal or some pristine state of being. Kintsugi, or this mending with gold, is invoked in the ceremony as an image of how we might collectively practice with the cracks of racial and religious animus, and especially now cracks of hatred, exposed in the conditions of the pandemic. And also this kintsugi has been, as an image of healing, it's been working in me as I practice with my wounds and hurt places. And, as an approach, it's engaging with what's here, working with what is right here. And it has a kind of honesty in it, a practice of acknowledgement, of open-hearted recognition. And it points to how this is the ground of a practice of integration and becoming whole in a true sense. Given the magnitude of harm, kind of invoked in this ceremony of May We Gather, I can feel like my wounds are maybe too small or particular or personal to be mentioned in this talk. While I also feel a resonance between how I want to practice and this ritual enactment of kintsugi in the ceremony. And I also feel that my wounds, however petty they may seem, are my vital responsibility. My judgmental mind might view them as petty, but as they come into my body, they don't feel so petty. And in a broader and deeper sense, how I practice with my wounds is very much to the point of how I'm connected to others, how I'm living in relationship, how I can participate in efforts to heal racial and social harms. And so recently, I've been getting in touch with a wound of feeling like I don't matter. And I can't remember how this wound was formed and or deepened. But I can, reflecting back, I can see it showing up in some various places. And so looking at my childhood, two memories came up. One, when I was 10 or so, I was visiting my friend Kevin, and his dog had puppies. And Kevin was excited to show me the puppies. When we went to see them, the mama dog got activated, and she kind of nipped at my hand. And I wasn't bleeding, but I was like, but I was a little bit hurt and definitely scared. And Kevin's mom came in, and she was dismissive, and she's like, "That's nothing," and I felt like I didn't matter, and I felt like my pain and my fear didn't matter, So that's so it's still with me, that moment. Another time, about a year later, I was at my friend Ninka's house, and I'd accidentally broken a necklace that Ninka had found. And her mother said, "That was stupid." And Ninka said, "He's sitting right here, Mom." And her mom replied, "I know." And here too, I felt like, ugh, I guess I feel like I don't matter. And if I have this open wound already, before these things happened, I had the wound, and then those things touched the wound, and then and also the wound maybe presupposes me to interpret an event in terms of like it's touching this wound, or it's doing what this wound is feeling. More recently, sometimes our son, Loka, just doesn't respond at all to something I'm saying. Like I might be asking, like, what does he want for breakfast? Or would he come and eat his breakfast? Or, many different things that, are happening in a day. And sometimes I can feel like he's ignoring me. And when I feel like that, or when I see that, when I see his not responding in those terms, this can touch my wound of not mattering. And I also find this can come up for me in driving. Like I can experience someone cutting me off or not engaging in common courtesy, which could just be like, lapses in attention. But again, if when I have my wound, I can see it in terms of this feeling like I don't matter. And like this feeling that I know I don't matter, I can see it like intersecting with like, feeling diminished or feeling unworthy or feeling unseen or feeling less than. And I'm also noticing that when I'm not in touch with my wound, if I'm not in touch with the hurt, I can become upset. I can become unkind. I can become unkind in thought, just in what I'm thinking, in speech, and potentially in action. And this makes me think of a quote in Paula Arai's work. This is a quote by Umemura. And Paula Arai describes Umemura as a Japanese Buddhist woman. I think she's a lay Zen Buddhist practitioner. And the quote is, "I know I am healed when I am kind." So I know I am healed when I am kind. And a kind of corollary to that may be, and where I am not kind, how am I wounded? When I am unkind, am I acting out woundedness? When I am unkind, am I in a reactive mode? Am I engaged in self-protection? Do I feel like I'm protecting myself from some threat to my well-being? And in that, am I at risk of creating new harm, perpetuating, deepening suffering? Small slights can open into great harm, if they touch an open wound. I saw in the news that on Friday in Southern California, a 6-year-old boy was killed after being shot in what they're calling a road rage incident. So my unkindness can point to like a wound, something that's not healed, a crack. And this is something, something, how do we address this? How do we apply some mending with gold here? What is the mode of engagement that is healing? And it strikes me that the gold lacquer is applied carefully or tenderly and with a kind of precision or, a thorough attention to the exact contours of each crack and following along the whole course of the cracks between each broken piece. So in terms of like our practice in Zazen, our practice of meditative attention, growing a welcoming space, a kind but also thorough feeling into the fullness of this moment and every particular crack or every fissure or every line of pain and hurt all the way. And this can include like some gentle inquiry, tending to a quality of curiosity. And how do I feel this fully? What is happening here? And it's a process of opening. I feel my way along my wound or into my pain and breathe into my pain. And I'm also feeling layers and patterns of grasping. And also, so inquiring into grasping, inquiring into holding, various ways we hold our pain in our body and try to manage it and allowing it to open. With this wound in particular, I feel down and I find a bowl of burning lava and kind of burbling in my belly. It's really burning, very hot. And there is some holding it in my belly. And so if that releases, then there's like a bigger, deeper fissure of burning or a kind of crack of pain reaching from my belly up to the top of my neck. Sometimes I might be a little attached, to how I am broken. I might find a kind of security or a familiarity of like knowing who I am and how the wound is and how my patterns of reactivity have hardened around a wound. So there's ways in which I actually hold my wound in place and hold it away from a healing process. So patterns of grasping are unskillful attempts at self-protection. And what's unskillful about them is they're not healing. And they're often like mixed in with belief in separation. We're kind of, frame of separation, understanding our lives in terms of separation. My grasping and my reactivity keep my wound unhealed and then function to maintain the wound as a source of unkindness in thought and speech and action. So I can breathe into the pain and breathe compassion and love and curiosity into a wound. Carefully applying this gold to the cracks and fissures to right where the wound is open. And my intention is not to try to erase the wound or make it small or just get the pain to go away. And gold mending is this image of healing as a process of intimacy and integration and opening to a wholeness, which includes wounding. And painful history is a part of what makes me me. Also includes moments of joy, vitality, creativity, connection, and love as part of what makes me me. And as an image of integration, kintsugi is also resonating with me with the image of weaving, which Jisho, Dojin, and I have been bringing up in recent talks. An ongoing activity of realizing wholeness, a healing process. Practice realization is practicing wholeness, healing of my wounds, and connecting and partnering with others in healing relational and collective wounds. And this is integrating rather than transcending. It's intimate and respectful. And this is a form of healing based on opening to my own suffering, which in turn is like a deep support for opening to the suffering of others. The healing is not getting away from the suffering, but a spaciousness and a freedom and of movement we can discover in intimacy with suffering, my own and others. So in a process of real healing, in a process of genuine liberation, I feel supported and upheld to be even more fully open to my pain and others' pain. I am supported and inspired by healing and freedom to plunge into fully being a sentient being in a world of vast and profound suffering. The Bodhisattva lotus flowers rooted in the muddy water, or we also say it blossoms in the midst of fierce flames. The precious mirror samadhi says, or one translation says, the meaning is not in the words, yet it responds to the inquiring impulse. The healing is not in attaining something or getting away from the pain. It arises with the inquiring impulse. Freedom is not transcendence or escape. It arises with the inquiring impulse. Meaning and healing, freedom. This is not something static I can get apart from my activity in this moment. Meaning, healing, freedom, this illuminates my life the more wholehearted I am. It's a process of opening. It arises with inquiry. It arises with the present activity, with deep curiosity. I see or I view, attempts to fix my pain or fix my wound or fix my suffering as forms of grasping. When I'm involved in trying to fix something, I have a picture already in my mind of what the fixed thing is going to look like, what the repair is going to do, of what meaning looks like, of what healing and freedom are. And then I'm going to try and take this moment and fix it, this moment of pain and suffering, and fix it into this better meaning, this better healing, this better freedom. Or try to get back to a pristine bowl. And maybe go along with being really reactive if there's a chip or a crack is exposed or becomes visible. Because I'm really involved with this pristine bowl. And so healing, this healing in the spirit of kintsugi is not trying to get back to the bowl before it was broken. It's more dynamic than that. And this is also vital to how healing can unfold into deeper compassion and love. So the meaning of life, or true healing, or actualizing freedom, this is always alive and particular to this moment. Inseparable from my present activity, always in process. A kind of communion, right here. Or a kind of a thickening of relationality right here. The meaning, of the last moment, the healing of yesterday, the freedom from the past are not the meaning or the healing or the freedom of this moment. And it's always a living meaning. Awakening is always a living healing, a living freedom. Healing is always in movement towards healing. Intimacy with my pain, with my suffering, opens into greater possibilities of compassion and skillful responsiveness. As inquiry is open, far-reaching, and endless, meaning and healing, freedom, awakening is open, far-reaching, and endless. And this inquiring impulse, it may appear as a question I could think, as conceptual activity. It may live as an impulse, a sense of inquiry, or a curiosity. It can be enacted or engaged or expressed through a gesture or, a posture or an activity or a single word, or in feeling pain or tending to grasping and breathing in, breathing out. A sense of inquiry can fill the activity of sitting in zazen. A sense of inquiry can fill the intention to feel and engage the fullness of what's happening. This is like zazen as the quiet exploration of zazen. When I repair my bowl, then I can use it. The bowl that was broken can be of service. When I can release experiencing someone as a threat, when I can release reactive self-protection, I can start to open to how they too may be struggling with their own wounds. They may be acting out their own pain through reactivity and self-protection. It's a healing ceremony, such as May We Gather, or a healing ceremony such as Zazen, can support us to take further steps toward addressing active harm that's still unfolding. And a ceremony can also function to bring us together in this practice of healing and freedom and compassionate response. Another thing that struck me in May We Gather is Duncan Ryuken Williams said, "We do not suffer alone, nor do we heal alone." So what does healing look like? Is healing like a delicate restoration to something fragile and precious that we need to anxiously guard and protect? Or is healing deep, flexible, resilient engagement and integration? In my wounds and any dispossessed part of myself can become gilded fissures that are inseparable from my deepest offering to the world. And is healing something I do by myself as an individual in an apparently separate self? Or is it nourished, by relationality and itself endlessly opening into deeper relationality, or an intimate, radical, transformative relationality? So I want to finish here with a passage from Lama Rod. Healing is being situated in love. Healing is not just the courage to love, but to be loved. It is the courage to want to be happy, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. It is interrogating our bodies as an artifact of accumulated traumas and doing the work of processing the trauma by developing the capacity to notice and be with our pain. If we are to heal, then we must allow our awareness to settle into and integrate with the pain and discomfort that have been habitually avoided. We cannot medicate the pain away. We embrace it. And in so doing, establish a new relationship with experience. We must see that there is something that must be befriended, This is the true nature of our experience. And in finally approaching this experience, we contact basic sanity. All right. And so, thank you very much. I welcome any comments, expressions, questions. Please just unmute yourself.
Charlie, it seems to me that mostly we become aware of where we're deficient in some way by others giving us feedback. I mean, we might feel, oh, that didn't go quite right or something like that, but also I think in many ways, maybe not totally, but in many ways, we rely on other people to give us that kind of feedback, especially in a situation like a Sangha, where we might engage with people on a variety of levels, inside and outside, Zendo activities. I'm hearing from you a call for the Sangha to be there for each other in that way. Would that be part of what you think you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty challenging right now,
Yeah.
to even feel ourselves as a Sangha, it's been so long.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably, I don't know. I feel a big yearning to regather in person. Partially for these reasons, that we could, of how we support each other in this and challenge each other as being, part of the jewel of Sangha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie, I got a question for you. At this point, especially as I'm getting older, but in my world, sadly, even as I was quite a bit younger, there was a lot of loss, a lot of lost people. That is very hard to get past, to heal. They don't leave me; they're there. It's not as if I pretend they're not there, but it's a continual struggle to stay in the moment and not fall back into the despair over losing all those folks.
Well, I would, I think we don't want to kind of drown in despair, but I think I would I'd even welcome grief and try to give grief as much space as we can. And maybe trust that, giving the space grief is kind of entering a process. We might not be here to get past our grief. But I think when we, I think we're taking care of our heart, and the heart of our life, if we give our grief space. That'd be my encouragement, is give this space, and if I have intense grief, I welcome it into Zazen. Like my Zazen just becomes grief practice for a while. And that's my life, that's our life. And it's inevitable.
Yeah.
In this world. And yeah. And we wouldn't but it's the only way to be is to be in loss, right? I mean, the eternal beings. They don't,
That's, that's kind of what we buy into when we're born.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Korin,
Yes.
thank you for the very thought-provoking talk. And I wanted to say I was really struck by you saying, giving those examples of when you were like 10 years old, and that this woman just really put you down. And my guess is that everybody has something that happened when they were a child, and that has lingered through your whole life and colored everything that happens to you and the way you react. I can think of stuff when I was little and how that has totally shaped my outlook on life. And it would just be interesting for people, if they aren't already aware, I'm sure they are maybe, but to really, see where that is and how that's affected their life.
Yeah. Well, I think especially with the hurt stuff, with the stuff that hurts, that we're still living from, and like with my son can touch this hurt place. He's not saying I don't matter. He's just really involved with something. He's just doing a thing that like a 9-year-old does. He's not there thinking like, I'm going to make my dad feel like he doesn't matter, but that's how it hits me. So then that's my work, my responsibility to show up, fully as a loving dad, is I need to take care of my wound. And I feel like these are very deep, going back to our childhood and back maybe to like when I was a baby even. And they can be, we can grow, we can heal. Healing is possible.
I don't know if you ever grow out of it, but it's there and you can be aware of it.
Yeah. Well, you went through a process. Yeah. And you can gradually alleviate the suffering to self and others.
Korin, I'm wondering how, I think the word comes up is how necessary at some point is therapy along with our Zazen practice. I mean, I know as a young student, I thought it was all going to get taken care of on the cushion. And at some point, a teacher said to me, I think you need therapy. And I said, I don't believe in therapy. And meaning I had invested my whole being and trust in the therapy, in the Zazen and in the monastic. And he said, how can you not believe in it? It exists. But anyway, that's and you can go all into the different cycles. But it seems, we can have our methods. We can write about it. We can reflect on it. We can sit with it. And there's also things that just, perhaps there are other methods and other people that can, and we can have teachers assisting us, but there are other ways that can help guide and give us a voice, give voice to people.
I think therapy can be a great skillful means, and that, I feel deeply benefited by therapy at multiple points in my life of practice, and that is kind of a wonderful compliment. And I think for Zen practitioners, I think sometimes it's nice if you can find a therapist who's a meditator, because then they'll have a sense of your practice and they can actually bring, your meditation practice can be a wonderful resource in a therapeutic process. And I don't know if everybody needs to do therapy all the time, but probably almost anybody at some time could get help by therapy.
Yeah, can address the cracks.
Yeah, yeah. As a particular, skillful way of exploring a woundedness, I think therapy has a really important place for us.
Thank you. I wanted to share an example because it just highlights right when the pandemic started easing down, I went to Sebastopol Hardware, and I know I was feeling a little vulnerable, more vulnerable than during the pandemic. I was out and I came out the side door and there were 2 cars waiting to leave. And just as I stepped forward, a 3rd car came and went right in front of me. And this anger rose up in me. It was a thing of, don't you see me? It was just an old thing. And because of the vulnerability, I couldn't just step back and move around and find a different way. And anyway, it's still with me, knowing that that vulnerable space it doesn't allow. At the same time, I felt to myself, and that perhaps she doesn't see you because you aren't a full being. I have my impermeable nature. But the emotional reaction is one of, don't you see me? So I appreciate your bringing this forward and continuing to work with our questions, our deepest questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Korin. That talk was really, really very, very helpful for me personally, because I tend to disregard whatever it is I sometimes feel and just say, oh, this is so small. The world is suffering and whatever this is just so small that I better just move on. That's kind of a lot of my attitude. And so your talk really made me pause and think, you know what? Small doesn't mean you don't acknowledge it when it arises. And just, again, it was just really yeah, it's okay. Small things can lead to big things later on if you don't take care of it.
Yeah.
Really, really helpful. And your examples of your own life, I mean, that's something that I think everybody can relate to. And that's made it really, that's what brought home to me that, there's no such thing as small, really. You just pay attention to what's there. And I found that really helpful. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Korin, I found your talk very deep, and I really appreciate it. And it's still percolating through me. A couple things that arising in me from it is recognizing that there's a certain amount of courage that's needed in healing. That you have to step forward and be willing to be vulnerable. And I really appreciated what you said about we don't suffer alone and we don't heal alone. I think that's particularly important for men to acknowledge. It's not our cultural conditioning. My wife and I have been reading this book together called The Will to Change by Ben Hooks, which is about the patriarchy and toxic masculinity and whatnot. And for me right now, it's all about this interface of seeing this social, it's a cultural phenomenon that is deeply embedded. And even though I've made life choices away from that culture, it's deeply embedded in my psyche. And the ways I interact with her, which is incredibly painful to feel. And I think that moving forward in vulnerability, to just listen to how it feels for her, for example, when I'm dismissive of something, which I barely even notice, right?
Mhm.
I barely even notice how I am in that regard. It's very painful, but it also is this feeling of like an opening between us, of me actually experiencing something that's going on that I'm in denial about. This is probably too big a question, but I'm just really, really interested in this personal, where the personal healing and the can come together with addressing these underlying cultural and social systemic problems like toxic masculinity and racism. It just feels it is the work, I feel like, right now for me.
Yeah. No, I think it's really vital work, and I feel like there is the vulnerability, and there's also I think kind of like well, like it's a structure it's a system of conditioning, and so I think it's important to kind of just appreciate that, like, we didn't make it. We were, it was handed to us. We were imprinted with it. And so to kind of appreciate that, like, that, our work is to deal with that consequence. But I think sometimes, like, with, to admit my own patriarchy or my own racism, if I just feel like, well, it's mine and I made it, there can be a kind of, anyway, I think that's sort of like a not particularly helpful contemplation, but that actually it was collectively created. It was relationally formed. And I think, if growing up in this country, somewhat inescapable for almost every person. And so we are living with these systems of suffering. And so I think you have to get to accept that in ourselves, and then to start to get in touch with it, and that we want to be able to acknowledge this as clearly and fully as we can, to start getting the cracks into the air, into the light, and then that's when a healing process won't happen until we can really acknowledge, what we're carrying in here. And yeah, so I feel like again, like, our practice is a wonderful, interface with this work of working with our systemic conditioning, and that also, and that relational contexts are also just only going to benefit, the whole process deeply. As you said. Thank you. All right. Is that good? I was here. All right. The vows are in the chat. Thank you all very much.
Charlie, are we going into small groups at all?
Yeah, there'll be an opportunity after announcements.
Yeah.
Okay. Four great bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless. I vow to free them. The illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are not. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to realize it.